Welcome to the Darkstream. I'm Vox Day, Streamlabs All-Star. And tonight I'm going to ponder that question, Generation Shapiro or Generation Zyklon? The topic was suggested by an astonishing article in National Review today. It originally appeared in the Daily Beacon, and it was written by a gentleman by the name of Matthew Continetti, the editor-in-chief of the Washington Free Beacon. Now, what's interesting is that the article is entitled Generation Shapiro, and the subtitle is Ben Shapiro and the Future of American Conservatism. Now, what a lot of you may not realize is that I have been around Ben Shapiro. In fact, he was a colleague of mine at WorldNet Daily for 6 years or so, something like that. I don't recall exactly. But the thing that was truly astonishing was the way in which that no one actually read his stuff. You know, I had the statistics to the site. I was given access to them by the publisher. And the most popular columnist by far was the site owner, Joseph Farah. He wrote a daily column, and it was popular. And the second most popular column was always Pat Buchanan's. And the third most popular column was Ann Coulter's. I was usually number 4. Hold on a second. What is these technical difficulties I'm hearing about? I see we are having technical difficulties. I don't know what that means. Other than the fact that we're getting comments and apparently 0 viewers. Repeatedly retracting your message doesn't make it go away. You know, if you could explain what the problem is, that would be helpful. Oh, and now we've got the viewers showing up, so it was just a delay. So, okay, so the folks said that they missed the beginning of the Darkstream. So what I'll do is I'll just pop up the cover again. The topic is Generation Shapiro or Generation Zyklon, and I am discussing an article that appeared on National Review today called Generation Shapiro. So, and like I was saying, I've been aware of Ben Shapiro for a much longer time than most of you, and it's because we were both editorial contributors, columnists at WorldNet Daily. And what I was saying was that I have known for a long time, I believe it was since 2005, that Ben Shapiro is a utter fraud. And what I mean by that is that Ben Shapiro does not have any real principles. He does not have any serious conservative credentials. And most of the stuff that he says is merely in order to maintain his viability as a public intellectual figure. Now, how do I know that? How am I so confident of that? Well, Ben Shapiro himself told me this. You see, he had a crisis of conscience after he had been running his column on WorldNet Daily for a while. And he admitted that he didn't have any original thoughts of his own. He was merely echoing Republican talking points And he was beginning to wonder what the point of doing this was. Now, obviously, he finally managed to come to terms with the fact that he was a fraud. Because the thing is, all you need to know about Ben Shapiro's position on any subject is whether he believes it's good for his own identity group or not. That is no different than the position of the father in Chaim Potuk's famous book, The Chosen. And this has been obvious about Shapiro since 2005. For me, I didn't mind him. I thought he was just a meaningless stunt. He was supposed to be a wonder kid, precocious, all this sort of thing. He wasn't. Anyone who is genuinely intelligent is perfectly capable of seeing through everything that the kid writes. There's not only is there not a single original thought expressed in any of his entire literary catalog, but you can see that his positions are entirely based on the who-whom situation. So like some of the commenters have been saying, it's good to hunt down racists and fire them, but it's okay for this Korean girl to run around talking about how she wants to kill white males and so forth and still work for the New York Times. Roseanne tweets a few things and she deserves to be fired. And James Gunn, tweets dozens and dozens of tweets about pedophilia and child molesting and so forth, but he shouldn't be fired. There's absolutely no consistency. There's absolutely no intellectual integrity. There's simply nothing there. And so, so I've watched his entire career as he graduated from simply repeating the Republican talking points to getting nationally syndicated by, Creator Syndicate, despite the fact that he was not one of the 20 most read columnists on the site. What you may have missed was that the top weekly columnist on the site was Pat Buchanan. The number 2 columnist was Ann Coulter. The number 3 columnist was me. Shapiro wasn't even in the top 20. Nobody read his columns. And yet, he was selected for national syndication by Creator Syndicate. And so that same process has continued. He is entirely dependent upon being propped up by his organizational support. This isn't a secret. You can simply look at the people that he surrounds himself with, or the people that are creating this false image of an extremely popular, extremely successful, extremely influential guy. A commenter says, the first time you said you were number 4 and Farrah was number 1, you didn't listen. When are you guys going to learn to stop trying to catch me out in small errors? Farrah was a daily columnist. I said that the first time I just said columnist. Then I realized That really didn't put it in proper perspective. The weekly columnists were, top weekly columnists were Pat Buchanan, Ann Coulter, and myself. Farah, being a daily columnist, as well as a site owner, his column, usually was the most popular. Anyhow, I didn't really think about Shapiro at all until 2005, when I dubbed him the littlest chicken hawk. And the reason that I did so, this was back in 2000, remember this is back in 2005, okay? And what Shapiro did, despite the fact that he was of an age to join the military, he wrote and claimed that invading Iraq and invading Iran and basically invading the entire Middle East and establishing an American empire that would be democratic was the most vital the most vital issue of our time. It was the absolute priority for the United States of America. And yet, he didn't join the military. It was more important for him to go to college and go to law school. I mean, this is the literal definition of a chicken hawk. Somebody who demands the country go to war, but refuses to do so for himself. So back in 2005, I dubbed him the littlest chicken hawk. And he tried to, justify himself and defend himself, and it was absolutely, totally inept. Totally unconvincing, And it really astonished me that anyone took him seriously after that. I mean, Shapiro has no intellectual integrity at all. I mean, think about this. He prides himself, his supporters talk about how he's supposed to be this fearsome debater. He's written a little pamphlet on how to destroy liberals in an argument. But here's the thing. He ran away from the opportunity to debate Milo Yiannopoulos. Twice he talked about a general debate challenge. I contacted him and said, Ben, I'll be happy to debate you. Once it was on economics. I don't recall what the other one was. Both times he practically left tracks fleeing in the opposite direction. And so, the guy is a complete and utter fraud. Shapiro is not even a classical liberal. Classical liberals are consistent. There's no consistency to Shapiro's positions. He switches his position depending on what his perception of A, what is good for his career, and B, what is good for his interest group. Now, there's nothing wrong with supporting your interest group. I think that that's a normal and natural thing for everyone to do. But what's wrong about it is claiming that you support these general principles and then promptly casting them aside the moment that they happen to contradict with your identity. And especially when you claim to be against identity politics while openly and aggressively practicing them yourself. A commenter notes, someone called Ben the littlest chicken hawk the other day, didn't even give you credit. Hey, I don't mind. They don't need to credit me. The important thing is for people to understand that he is the littlest chicken hawk, to understand that he is a complete hypocrite, to understand that he has no intellectual integrity, to understand that he has no real principles. That's the important thing to understand. And the most important thing to understand is that he is being propped up as approved opposition by the left-wing media because they don't want you listening to people like Stefan Molyneux. They don't want you listening to Lawrence Southern. They don't want you listening to Mike Cernovich. They don't want you listening to Milo Yiannopoulos. They don't want you listening to Greg Johnson. They don't want you listening to Pat Buchanan or Ann Coulter, because all those people are talking about the thing that frightens them most, and all those people are talking about nationalism. That is the biggest single issue in the world today. Nationalism versus globalism. There's a question, how will true opposition really break through? Organically. Naturally. People believe the evidence of their eyes. It used to be possible to lie about free trade because no one was really practicing it. There wasn't the ability to move labor and move capital around the world in a way that completely disproved it. Now people can see for themselves that free trade bankrupts the wealthier nation. It's not an accident. I've covered this months ago. I told people that Trump's trade war was going to improve the American economy, and it was going to drive GDP up. It had to drive GDP up by virtue of the way that GDP is calculated. Right? So anyhow, it's not a surprise that the Ben Shapiros of the world are being propped up because they're the only people dishonest enough. People like Jonah Goldberg, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, they are the only people dishonest enough to try to argue against the observable trends that everybody can see for themselves. So they have to come up with these complicated, theoretical, abstract arguments to try to convince you not to believe what you can see. And that's why they're going to fail. The reason that we on the nationalist side are going to continue to become more and more successful, more and more popular, more and more influential, is not because we're politically ambitious. It's not because, we're smarter. It's not because, we are better able to perform on camera. I mean, for God's sake, look at me. I don't even have a voice for radio. But the difference is we tell the truth. And when you tell the truth, eventually perception catches up with reality. Someone made a good point talking about communism. The same thing happened with communism. It was much easier for the left to argue for communism before the atrocities in wrecked countries. Exactly. Nobody takes communist economic arguments seriously anymore. Why? Because they saw the difference between the economic development of the Soviet Union versus the economic development of Japan. They saw the difference between capitalist-dominated Western Europe, communist-dominated Eastern Europe. Say what you will about the flaws of the neoliberal world order, But to the extent that they permitted genuine capitalism, it did generate and permit economic growth. And so Gamma Catch has a good point. All of these right personalities that are being mainstreamed are set to guide us back into passivity. It's not just into passivity. It's into some form of watered down globalism. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about the pan-white nationalism of Richard Spencer. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about the pseudo-conservatism, or the movement conservatism of Ben Shapiro. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about the clean your room philosophy of Jordan Peterson. All of these things are designed to try to turn you away from the two things that the globalists, neoliberals fear the most. Number one, nationalism. Number two, Christianity. Now, I know that some of you who are not Christians don't like to hear that. And I understand that. But what I'm telling you is that you are not going to have the West. You are not going to have Western civilization. You are not going to have Christendom. You're not going to have scientific integrity and a lot of the things that you value without Christianity. You know, the West developed the way it did because of that. And if you want to keep the West, then you need the three aspects of Western civilization: the European nations, Christianity, and the Greco-Roman legacy of philosophy and law. If you don't have those things, you will not have it. So that's a bit of an aside. Someone says, what about family values and monogamy? That's part of Christianity, as it was practiced for hundreds of years. That's kind of funny. Laura Ingraham had Little Ben on last week, and it was hilarious because she was scorching Never Trump, stupid trade, stupid wars, neocons, not realizing that her guest was one. Exactly. That's the problem. People don't understand what these people are. They don't understand that the intellectual dark web figures, as the New York Times anointed them, are all integrity-free intellectual frauds. You know, read their books. You know, if you don't believe me, read Jordan Peterson's books, both of them. If you don't believe me, read Ben Shapiro's books. Doesn't matter which one. And then go and read a real author. Read Samuel Francis. Even read somebody who's hopelessly wrong, like Francis Fukuyama. I mean, when you encounter first-class minds, even second-class minds in writing, you very, very quickly recognize that, you know, these modern-day pseudo-intellectuals are not even third-class minds. And so, you know, this was the best part of the article, and it really made the point, underlined the point that I'm making. For in his prolific output, forensic zeal and ability, love of the fray, exhausting schedule, adoption of new communications platforms, captive audience, and conservative ecumenicism, Ben Shapiro resembles no one so much as the young William F. Buckley, Jr. Now, I don't know if you understand the significance of that, but William F. Buckley was the approved opposition of his day. the failed conservative movement that Ben Shapiro apparently is now becoming the anointed standard bearer of, is following in the footsteps of William F. Buckley, whose entire role was to keep the nationalist right out of the conservative movement. And so I think that the one honest thing about that article is when it said that Ben Shapiro is the next William F. Buckley. I think that's absolutely true. Now here's the ironic thing, is when I was nationally syndicated for my political column by Universal Press Syndicate, they actually signed me because they were looking for an intellectual heir to William F. Buckley. And I told them at the time that didn't make sense. And they said, well, their reasoning was very simple. Well, he's really smart, and we think you're the smartest of your generation of columnists, so that's why we think that you're the right one. And obviously it was, they signed me, and they signed Ann Coulter, and needless to say, every single newspaper in America except the Dallas Morning News went and signed Ann Coulter's column. Didn't want mine. So I can't blame them. It's probably the right choice. But let's see here. Jeekbod says, J.B. Peterson is good when he talks about psychology, but when he goes to history and philosophy, he is deadly wrong. Yeah, I just finished recording a Voxiversity video. It's going to be coming out in about a week. And it is entirely dedicated to Jordan Peterson. And I think that it conclusively demonstrates that as hopelessly integrity-free and as pseudo-intellectual as Ben Shapiro is, Jordan Peterson's actually worse. And so, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. But let's get back to the original question. Generation Shapiro or Generation Zyklon? Here's the thing. In every single major aspect of the global trends, Ben Shapiro is on the wrong side. The trend is towards nationalism. The trend is towards protectionism. The trend is towards identity politics. Shapiro is on the wrong side of the trend across the board, which means that there is, if the article is correct and Ben Shapiro is the future of conservatism, then conservatism is every bit as dead as John Red Eagle and I declared it to be in our book, Cuckservative. Conservatism failed. Conservatism conserved nothing. And so it's actually appropriate that a charlatan and a hypocrite like Ben Shapiro should become its new standard bearer, because he will fail, it will fail. Eventually, reality always catches up to perceptions, even when the entire media, the entire establishment is attempting to push a false narrative that flies in the face of reality. So, anyhow, let me tell you about one more little thing. How many of you, how come you don't have a badass Indian name like John Red Eagle? Probably because my Indian ancestry comes from my maternal side, not from my paternal side. Let's see here. How many of you have checked out Alt Hero? How many of you are readers of Alt Hero? backers perhaps, etc. If you're a backer, you already know what I'm going to talk about. Anyhow, for those of you who are interested in this particular front in the cultural war, which is much more important than you might think, I am very happy to be able to say that the latest issue of Alt Hero number 3, Reprisal, is now out. We're going to formally launch it on Monday, but if you happen to have an Amazon account, if you happen to be on Kindle Unlimited, then you can go ahead and read it tonight. And so there are a couple things that are a little bit different about the Amazon edition. Amazon bans Confederate flags, and so for the Amazon issue, we had to make sure that Rebel is wearing a Scottish flag inspired outfit. Totally different. Let's see. Also, the backers, I believe I said that the next issue was going to be related to London, but after talking to the illustrators, I found out that I actually had the order backwards with regards to which artist was further along than the other, and so the next issue is going to be drawn by Cliff Cosmic, and it will be the War in Paris. And I have to say, it's looking really good. People are telling me that issue number 3 is the best one yet, and I'm very happy to hear that. But I actually have to say that so far, I think issue number 4 may actually be my favorite. So, anyhow, if you get a chance, if you're interested, backers, you can go and leave reviews now on Amazon, and if you're not a backer, then issue number 3 is now available in its digital format. Oh dear. Is the hardcover coming after this 3rd episode? No, for about the 563rd time. As I have repeatedly said, and as it says on the crowdfunding site itself, each hardcover or paperback is 6 issues. Okay? So we're not going to be releasing any of the collections until we have 6 issues to collect. This is issue number 3. Issues number 4 and 5 are in process. But as soon as we get issue number 6 out, then we will be very, very happy to get those out to you. So, I mean, I appreciate that folks are eager, and I'm grateful for the support. But again, I repeat that the collections are 6 issues each, and we have to finish 6 issues before we can release a collection. So, and the collections are going to be larger, by the way, just so you know. They're not going to be the Royal Octavo size, but they're going to be the larger 10x7 size. Swan Knight Sun comic is not coming as soon as I would like, because Will has been in and out of the hospital. How can you read and talk at the same time? I read very fast. Great job on JF's show. Thank you. No, Vox is not going to be pissed that somebody didn't see me on JF's show 2 days ago. Oh, was I asked about? Opinion on JF. PhD biologist from Duke, killing it in the public space right now and becoming a thought leader in the alt-right. I like JF. I went on his show, despite the fact that I don't do media anymore, for the most part. I did go on his show because many people had asked me to. He's a nice guy. I enjoyed talking with him. I don't know that his math skills are particularly impressive. We had a little trouble explaining some stuff related to intelligence statistics to him, but he got it in the end. And so, and I don't know why people keep asking me about Dinesh D'Souza. My opinion on Dinesh D'Souza is I don't give a damn. So you can stop asking me about him. I literally have not paid attention to anything that Dinesh D'Souza has done since my interview with him on his book on evolution, I think it was, years ago, maybe 10 years ago. So, does dialectic have a place at all? Absolutely. How can one use it most effectively? Use it honestly in an audience that speaks dialectic. Don't use dialectic when the other side is using rhetoric. I thought JF was supposed to be a scientist. JF is a scientist. What you don't realize is that most scientists can't do math, don't understand statistics, can't do probability, and if you look at their training, if you look at the program of a biology PhD, the first thing that you'll notice is that there's almost no mathematics involved. There's no statistics, there's no probability, and so it's not a surprise that biologists are totally and utterly inept whenever it comes to anything related to numbers. The professor says, Dinesh's new film is about how the Dems are the real racist. This changes everything. Yeah, that's I mean, it's kind of funny. I actually, somebody pointed out one of his articles to me, and he's like basically just discovering that Richard Spencer is actually a leftist. He's several years behind, as it were. So, will there be infighting between Christians and pagans in the future? Probably, at least between Christians and the dumber pagans. They don't seem to be able. I've had a few run-ins with, these Odin LARPers myself. I mean, the thing is that there are no real pagans. They're basically the religious equivalent of D&D players. They don't actually believe any of the stuff that they're trying to create an alternative spirituality, but I take them less seriously than the average American Buddhist. It's not actual religion. It's not going to be the basis for anything. And what they don't understand is that they're making a mistake judging Christianity by the churchianity that they rightly oppose. Is decline of the West worth the effort? Which decline of the West? If you're talking about, are you talking about Huntington, or are you talking about Oswald Spencer? If you're talking about Oswald Spencer, don't even think about reading it. So, JF was early on JBP, though, you have to admit it. Oh, he was, absolutely. JF's a smart guy. I like JF. He's very sound on Jordan B. Peterson. He recognized Peterson as a fraud on site, as I did. I just didn't pay any attention to him for a while. Will Pat Buchanan live long enough to see his naturalism take deep root in American politics? Probably not, unfortunately, but I think that Pat's a smart guy. He can see the trend. I think he's okay with it. So, Spengler, yeah, don't bother reading the Spengler book. I've read about half of it myself and really didn't find it terribly useful. So, anyhow, thanks for tuning in. Have a good evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next Darkstream.